Welcome to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about homesteading stuff and life stuff and everything in between. Join me, Amy Dingman, as we explore big questions on a little farm. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about life and how to live a good one. Today is February 11th, 2025, and this is episode 307. Today, we are going to talk about a shift that I feel is happening in some parts of the homesteading world, where homesteading is becoming less of a this is my entire identity kind of thing, and that kind of all-consuming, super exciting, OMG, homesteading is the best kind of thing, that has kind of defined homesteading in the past, at least for me. And when I first started the notes for this podcast, I had one super solid reason that I thought this was happening. I was like, I'm going to tell you all why this is happening. I've got it all figured out. But as the notes sat for a little bit in my computer, I realized there's another reason as well, and it's probably a more obvious one. So if you have been doing the homesteading thing for a while and it's just not hitting anymore, and you are wondering why it's not as kapow exciting anymore, why does it feel like it's dying out? Why does it feel like it's not as all-encompassing? Maybe you're wondering, is something wrong? Was it just a phase? This episode might be particularly helpful for you. But before we get into that, what has been happening on the Lifestead? Well, guess what? We got snow. We got about 8 inches of snow in the last storm that went through here. So that's kind of exciting. I was really glad that no wind came with it, because that would have been pretty crazy. The last little snowstorm we got, where we got, 2-3 inches, there's a lot of wind that came with it. So there was some serious drifting, causing all sorts of issues. But this was just a nice, really peaceful, very calm 8 inches of snow. And it's been a hot minute since we've had like a decent blanket of snow here on the farm, which is weird because this is Minnesota and it's supposed to be a snowy place. But what else? I have been intentionally drinking less coffee lately. Y'all, I love coffee, but I just can't drink as much coffee as I used to. It's not good for me. It makes my heart do all sorts of crazy things. It gives me crazy anxiety, and I just need to stop with so much caffeine. And so I've switched to tea. And yes, black tea has caffeine in it, not as much as coffee does. But I'm finding out about all these great teas that I like. We actually grew a lot of different things last year in the garden that we can obviously use as tea. Peppermint, lemon balm. We grew this amazing chocolate mint last year that makes a really great tea. It's just so flavorful. But I'm getting all into the tea. So if you have a tea that you really like, whether it's a black tea, a green tea, herbal tea, whatever, drop me a line, amy@afarmishkindoflife.com, or find me on social and let me know what kind of tea you like to drink, because I'm just getting all into the tea. I love it. It's such good stuff. This is the time of year where I'm looking online, I'm looking on social media, I'm talking to people, and people are starting to talk about starting seeds and getting chicks and doing all this super exciting stuff, right? And up here in Minnesota, where I'm in zone 4A, I think, right on the border of 4A, 4B, I think. But it's not time to start seeds. Well, mostly. I don't normally start seeds until the beginning of April because of the things I grow. They don't need to start until April. But let me tell you, I always have a little bit of fear of missing out right now because people are getting all excited and they're starting to do the things. And I just have to live vicariously through all of you who are already doing the things, because I am not doing the things. A memory came up just a couple days ago, and it showed that my comfrey, like 2 or 3 years ago, was already coming up like the beginning of February, because we didn't have any snow. It was one of those weird years we didn't have any snow. And I'm looking outside, and we got a decent amount of snow. I don't know where anything is in my yard right now. So I'm just going to have to live vicariously through you. So all of you who are posting these great pictures of things you're already doing to start up the homesteading season, know that I'm rooting for you as I sit where it's cold and sip my tea. Speaking of chicks, we're all talking about how eggs are expensive and people are starting to want to get into chickens again. And, I talked about that last week in the intro about how if you're getting into chickens because you want free eggs, you're going to be sorely disappointed because obviously it's not free. But I was doing a little more research at various hatcheries to see prices and what they have available. And Hoover's Hatchery out of Iowa, which is where our local farm store used to get their chicks from. They don't anymore, but I was looking at that hatchery, and they actually have on their website, they have a note that says, "We apologize for the inconvenience. We currently do not have availability for the 2025 season. We encourage you to visit one of our trusted farm store partners in your area for your poultry needs. Thank you for your understanding and support." Whoa. And I had a bunch of people sending me this going, what's going on? Oh my gosh. These big hatcheries don't have any chicks, right? Now, understand something. The local farm stores have to get their chicks from somewhere, and I've started to wonder if some of these bigger hatcheries that are saying we don't have any chicks, I wonder if it's because they've decided it's way easier to deal with the stores, like Tractor Supply and Runnings and local feed stores. Have they just decided it's easier to deal with the stores than deal with orders from individual humans? Because I can see how that would be a thing. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's a little bit of an inkling that I'm wondering about. If you want to order from, let's see, I think it was McMurray's. That's another well-known hatchery that I have ordered from sometimes way back in the day. You're going to need to get on it because they're already at least a month out on chicks. And as more folks start looking at the price of eggs and thinking, oh, I want to get into chickens, those available chicks are going to be harder to get. Okay, so just be conscious of that. Don't decide you're going to order your chicks in May and then go, oh, there are no chicks, or oh, there's a 3-month wait for chicks, or what. So just be conscious of this. The other thing that I want to point out here is that if you have chickens already and you've got a rooster, you might be able to help some folks out this year with their chick needs, either by giving them hatching eggs or hatching out chicks for them yourselves and then distributing them among the people, either for money or for goodwill or whatever you want to do. That's an option you have. If you don't have an incubator, I have a video about how to build one. I will put a link in the show notes. Otherwise, just go to my YouTube channel, Farmish Kind of Life, and look up homemade incubator, and it should come up for you. There you go. Just throwing some thoughts out for you. What else? The end of this week is Valentine's Day, and I am reminded it's just about time to bring the gals to Slim Shady for another date. Love is in the air, y'all. It's going to be great. All right, let's head over to the main topic and talk about homesteading and why it's maybe not as exciting anymore. Oh my gosh, was it just a phase? Is it just another phase I went through in my life? Let's talk about that. So today we are tackling this shift that I feel is happening in the homesteading world, or parts of the homesteading world. I feel like people are pulling away from the all-consuming kind of this is my identity vibe of homesteading. And honestly, I think that's okay. It's okay because let's face it, homesteading does not need to be the thing that defines your entire life. It's a part of your life, but it doesn't have to be the filter that you run every single other thing through. You may have been the person back in the day, whether that was 2 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you may have been the person who would corner someone at a party and ask them, hey, have you tried fermenting your own pickles? Or, hey, have you tried making your own sourdough? Or, hey, have you tried, all this stuff? You might have been that person. Now you might find that you're more the person who's likely to ask, what's your favorite show on Netflix? What are you watching right now on Netflix? Or, hey, what kind of mattress do you have? And do you like it? Because we're looking for a new mattress and we want to know opinions. What kind of mattresses do people have and do they like them? Those may be the conversations you're having. And you may feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not talking about homesteading all the time. What's happening to me? So we're going to talk about that today. There are 2 reasons I think that homesteading is going through this morph for some people. And before I get into the reasons, I just have to obviously point out here that these are just my thoughts. There are folks who are just getting into the homesteading thing, and so some of this episode probably isn't going to apply to you, and I get that. But I am talking as someone who's been at this for a while. And so these are some things that I've seen from my perspective, from the group of folks that I have been in, or, more large scale, the people I have followed online who were for quite some time pretty gung-ho and pretty vocal and pretty wild about anything and everything that had to do with homesteading. And now a good chunk of those folks have either gotten real quiet, or they have shifted their focus, or they're thinking there's something wrong with them because they're not super excited about homesteading more. And they're saying, was that just a phase? Was homesteading just a phase? Is homesteading just a thing that comes up, in society over and over again? It goes through these phases where it's exciting and everybody's doing it, and then it kind of dies off. Like, was this just a phase that we were in? So the first reason that I think we're dealing with this right now is we did kind of have a phase where a lot of people went all in and homesteading took over. And everybody's talking about it because everybody was into it. And that would have been the pandemic. That would have been the pandemic chaos we all went through. In 2020, we all went absolutely nuts for self-sufficiency, right? Bread machines sold out. People were panic buying chickens. Everybody was afraid of running out of toilet paper. Nobody could find yeast. Nobody could find flour. And we all decided we needed to prep for the apocalypse. And we had to fill our basements with rice and flour and sugar and all the things. And we needed to do everything that we could do ourselves because clearly the systems we had come to rely on were not reliable. And we needed to do something. And so it was a very eye-opening time for people. And so I think that's why a lot of people went whole hog on homesteading as much as they could. There were people out there trying to convince themselves they needed dairy cows. I had a friend who was like, I think I should get a dairy cow. And I was like, do you drink milk? Do you drink milk? Because a dairy cow is like a lot of work. I've never had a dairy cow. But I had a couple of friends who were like, you know what? We should all go all in on a dairy cow. I don't think so. But 2020 logic was a little different. But it made sense back then because homesteading became this sort of, well, it was two kind of things. It was this survival tool. Like we were learning stuff because we were going to survive. We were going to do things on our own. But it was also a hobby. And it was exciting. And it was something to talk about. It filled that kind of social void and it gave us purpose when it felt like everything else around us was falling apart. I remember I had a friend who said, you know what, back in the day, when I first got into homesteading, and she did get into this all during the pandemic, she's like, my Facebook feed looked like some kind of combination of Little House on the Prairie and then like some doomsday prepper's dream. Like that was my entire Facebook feed. I was just all into it, like 100%, and now she's branched out into other things. So why is there this shift? Why are we calming down? Number one, life moves on. We are not in the pandemic anymore. The world, I don't know if I should say this, the world is not on fire anymore, or as much. The world is always going to be on fire, but we are not at pandemic level insanity. If you think back to the crazy of 2020 and the times surrounding that, that was a special kind of crazy, and we're not there anymore, thank God. But so the world isn't on fire as much. And people are realizing, you know what? I don't need to live and breathe and dream homesteading anymore. I can also have a life. I can also have a life that includes a lot of different things. I think another reason that it kind of is going through a shift is there was the exhaustion factor. People were trying to do everything themselves. Do I really need to try and grow my own wheat so I can grind it into my own flour? No, you don't. Sometimes you just want to buy a frozen pizza and call it good. And that's okay. And it has now become okay again. I also feel like the shift is happening because there's this realization that homesteading doesn't need to be how you identify. Like that doesn't need to be your identity. It's kind of like that summer where you decided you wanted to train for a marathon, or you were really into scrapbooking or making jewelry or quilting. Homesteading can be a thing you do. It doesn't have to be the thing you are. I know that there were people who got really into homesteading and they would feel guilty for buying like vegetables at the store because they were supposed to be growing them at home on their own property. Why are you going to the store and buying vegetables? It was like they were breaking some homesteader code that nobody had just come out and said, but like everybody knew they were breaking this code. We're not worried about that anymore. Go to the store and buy the vegetables that you don't have yourself. There's no shame. Life is too short. So I feel like there's kind of this shift happening. Life is moving forward. We are not in the thick of a global panic anymore. Things have calmed down, kind of. And with it, I think a lot of us are rethinking our priorities. And it's funny because I know when people started getting into homesteading during the pandemic, there were some folks who said, just you wait. When things go back to normal, they're going to bail on the whole homesteading thing. And some people did. And you know what? Who cares? Who cares? It was a thing they did. It doesn't matter that they're not still doing it. It doesn't matter. Another thing that I think is interesting is that during the pandemic, we made a lot of relationships online, right? Especially within the homesteading community. And I think we're realizing now that long-distance relationships and online communities only go so far. Now, I love my online communities, absolutely love them, but they're not the same thing as in-person community. And I've recently realized there's a fabulous homesteading and self-sufficiency and self-reliance community based out of Tennessee, right? And what I've come to realize, especially this year, is that traveling from Minnesota to Tennessee for really great events used to feel like a really great idea. But now I realize that those people, even though they're wonderful and I love them, I love talking to them online, they're not my actual community. They are literally 1,000 miles from me. They're 1,000 miles away. And I had this moment early this year where I realized, you know what? Most of my extended family lives at least an hour from me. I got to drive an hour to see my dad. I got to drive an hour to see my mom. I got to drive an hour to see my grandma, all in different directions. But they're all about an hour away. And it's so hard to get together. And I'm spending time building communities that are based in a place that's 1,000 miles from me? That doesn't make any sense. So that was something that I kind of had to come to terms with. And I think it fits into the whole how there's just this shift in the homesteading world. I remember one time, pandemic-y times, well, not pandemic because they weren't having events, but shortly after the pandemic, when things opened up again, I drove hours to an event, a homesteading kind of event. And the speakers were fantastic. The people were fantastic. I just met some amazing people. But as I was driving home from this event, I realized something. I was not going to see most of these people ever again. And I had put a lot of energy into building connections that just were not going to last in the way that I needed them to. So I think that is also something that people are coming out of with homesteading and the pandemic. Like we want different things from our communities, and we don't necessarily want them based around homesteading because our lives are so much bigger than that. Homesteading doesn't always have to be the foundation for your friendship. And I think along the lines, we've forgot that a little bit. Because sometimes the best connections come from talking about things besides homesteading. Like how to fix your kid's science project disaster or which car repair shop won't rip you off. I remember last year I went to Nate and Aaron from Two Chicks Homestead. They had a homestead kind of gathering there at their place for the weekend. And we went. It was a great group of people. And it was technically a homesteader meetup, but we spent so little time talking about anything that had anything to do with homesteading. It was almost like people just wanted to talk about something else. People wanted to hear about something else. So I feel like the shift is kind of happening in a lot of different ways. But the pandemic and coming out of that and that whole mess is not the only reason. That's the reason that I was going to talk about originally, but I think there's a second reason that homesteading, the excitement fades or it just feels different after you've done it for a while. And that is that the excitement of newness is not supposed to last. It doesn't matter if we're talking about homesteading or anything else. When something is new, it's exciting. And after you've been at it for a while, it's not exciting. And that's normal, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So, I see every time a new homesteader talks to me, emails me, And we get talking about homesteading. I love the excitement that new homesteaders have. They are so excited about their first egg, the first carrot they grow, the first time they can something and they can put it on their shelf. They're so excited. And I love that. And I remember that feeling because I was there once. But we have been here at the farm now for 14 years. We had chickens for a couple years before that. I've had a Farmish Kind of Life website since like 2009 or something. It's not new anymore. And things feel familiar. The rhythm of what we're doing feels familiar. The hiccups and the challenges and the problems are all a little bit predictable. Like we know what's going to trip us up every year. Not that things don't come out of left field, but you know what I'm saying? You've been doing it for a while, so you're like, oh, yep, and here's the struggle again. Here's the thing that we got to work through. And then the things that go well, the wins and the successes, they're almost expected. Like you know what's going to happen. And so it feels different after you've been doing it for a while. And am I supposed to be feeling that rush still? Because I love homesteading. I love our life. I wouldn't trade this for anything at all. But the spark, the original spark, that like giddy and bubbly and little kid wide-eyed wondered, it's not there. It's not what it used to be. And honestly, I kind of miss that. I really do. But not feeling that doesn't mean that something is wrong. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. It's totally normal. It's completely normal. Because homesteading, like anything else, is not meant to stay in the honeymoon phase forever. Right? If you think about marriage, my husband and I will be married 25 years this year. And the longer you're married, the more it changes. And it's not that it gets worse. That's not what I mean. It gets comfortable and there's a commitment and it's like becomes this warm blanket that you can wrap up in. And there's this strength and a quiet joy, right? And it's not the butterflies in my stomach, because we've been dating for 3 weeks. And oh my gosh, it's so exciting. It's different and it's awesome. And I think that's also what happens with homesteading or anything else you get into and do it for longer than, a couple days. There's something really powerful about living a homesteading life, being here on the farm, and no longer having to guess at stuff, mostly. And being able to move through all the seasons of what we're doing here and all the things we're doing here, being able to move through that with confidence. Mostly, again. And then getting to that point where you've actually learned enough at a homesteading that you can teach others to do what you're doing. And completely understanding that you still have tons to learn yourself because we never stop learning. There's always something new to learn. But you've reached a point where you can teach other people what you've learned. And there's something really powerful about that. It's kind of a neat place to be. So maybe the key to getting excited again is we shouldn't be chasing the feeling of new. Maybe that's the wrong way to go about it. Maybe we should appreciate how much we know. Those are two different ways to look at anything new that you're heading into and then being in it for a while. It's not about the newness. It's about knowing, right? Remember when you first got married and suddenly your entire life was all about like, I'm married now. And it was so cool to be like, oh, I get to use the term husband or I get to use the term wife. And it's so exciting, right? Or you first had kids and everything revolved around baby milestones. My baby is 6 weeks old. My baby is 17 weeks old. My baby is 32 and a half weeks old and they can do whatever. I think homesteading is like that. It's really intense for a while and then it evens out. So I think these days I still homestead, obviously. Like homesteading is my life, but I don't let it rule my life. And I hope that makes sense. Like homesteading's a part of my life. It's a big part of my life, but I don't let it rule my life. I will talk to you all day long about chickens if you want to talk about chickens all day long. I will talk about pigs. I will talk about baking bread. I will talk about what I've learned foraging. I will talk about any of that all day long. But we can also talk about, my dog eating a shoe or some ridiculous plot twist in a book I'm reading. And I think for a long time, we all just talked about chickens or how we should get a milk cow because I think people were just afraid to talk about anything else. Like there was this cool club, and if they brought up what they watched on TV last night that had nothing to do with homesteading, like they'd be kicked out of the cool club. So it is okay to let go of the idea that homesteading needs to define you. It is part of life. It's not the whole thing. I think it's really important that we remember to let ourselves evolve. If right now you are more excited about picking out a couch for your living room or picking out paint colors for the main floor of your house, which is what I'm trying to do right now, if you are more excited about that than planting cucumbers, that's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. You're still you. You just have different priorities, and that's fine. So, what is your take? What's your take on this? I would love to hear what you have to say. Have you felt this shift too? Are you brand new at this and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, Amy? Or have you been at this for a minute and you're like, yep, totally feel this? I would love to know what you have to say. Drop me a line at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com or find me somewhere on social media, Facebook, Telegram, Discord, Instagram. I think those are mainly the places I am right now. I think it's a worthy discussion to have. You can do things in your life and they don't need to define you. And I think that's absolutely okay. It's so okay to talk about lots of different things. And I think that's why I like to call what I do lifesteading, because we're not just building a homestead, we're building a life. So that's why I call it lifesteading. And I think all y'all understand lifesteading. So there you go. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I always enjoy our little time together. Have a great week, you guys, and I will talk to you again soon. Hope you enjoyed the show today. To continue the conversation, visit our website at afarmishkindoflife.com, find A Farmish Kind of Life on social media, or drop me an email at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com. Peace, love, and bacon, y'all. Stay farmish.